Most fail not because of a lack of effort. In the dust-choked streets of ancient Babylon, beneath the sun that forged gold out of the very heat of the desert, men labored until their bones grew brittle and their eyes went dim. Yet they died in the same poverty into which they were born. They believed that wealth was a fickle goddess, a lightning bolt of luck that struck only the favored few, while the rest were destined to grind their lives into the silt of the Euphrates. But the reality is far more visceral and far more punishing. It is the realization that money follows laws as immutable as gravity, and to ignore them is to jump from a precipice expecting to fly. Imagine Bouncer, the chariot builder, sitting on his low wall, his tools idle, his heart heavy with a revolutionary despair. He is a man who has built the finest vehicles for the elite of the city, yet he cannot afford a single copper to buy his wife a new tunic. Beside him stands Cobby, the musician, whose lyre is empty of coins but full of mournful melodies. They represent the archetype of the striving victim, the individual who puts in the work, who possesses the skill, yet remains a slave to the immediate. Their realization is the spark that ignites this entire chronicle, that hard work, without the architecture of financial wisdom, is merely a slow form of suicide. They look at their childhood friend, Akkad, who was once no better than them, yet now stands as the wealthiest man in the world's wealthiest city. They do not seek a handout, they seek the secret, the hidden geometry of gold that Akkad has mastered while they were merely surviving. When they approach Akkad, we encounter the archetype of the sovereign mentor. Akkad does not offer them gold, he offers them a mirror to their own inadequacy. He recounts his beginnings as a lowly scribe in the Hall of Records, carving clay tablets for a pittance. He was a man drowning in the mundane until he met Algamish, the moneylender, a figure who radiated the cold, hard logic of capital. Algamish posed a challenge that remains the cornerstone of all prosperity. I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep. This sounds simple, yet it is psychologically shattering. Most people believe that what they earn belongs to the grocer, the landlord, and the tailor. They pay everyone else first and leave themselves with the scraps of their own life's energy. Akkad's initiation began when he started to pay himself at least 1/10 of everything he earned. This act is more than a budget, it is an assertion of self-worth. It is the moment a man stops being a conduit for money and starts being a reservoir for it. The lesson here is the law of the 10th, a psychological shift that demands you treat your future self as a preferred creditor. If you cannot save 1/10, you are a slave to your own appetites, and the gold you earn will always belong to someone else. The journey of Akkad further reveals the trial of the uninformed. Once he had saved his first significant sum, he committed the cardinal sin of the novice. He gave his savings to a brickmaker to buy rare jewels from the Phoenicians. The brickmaker, possessing no knowledge of gems, was swindled with colored glass. Algamish's rebuke was swift and merciless. He who takes advice about jewels from a brickmaker shall pay with his savings. This story segment highlights the archetype of the foolish investor. It teaches us that wealth is not just about accumulation, it is about the stewardship of that accumulation. You must seek counsel from those whose hands are already stained with the success you desire. To ask a man of no means how to grow a fortune is to invite catastrophe. Akkad had to start over, but this time, he carried the seed of wisdom. He eventually succeeded because he learned to make his gold work for him. He envisioned every gold piece as a slave, and every copper that gold piece earned as the children of that slave, all working tirelessly in his name. This is the birth of passive income, the sensational realization that money can be an autonomous, self-replicating force if it is protected and directed by a disciplined mind. As the fame of Akkad grew, the king of Babylon summoned him to solve a national crisis. The city was wealthy, but the wealth was concentrated in the hands of a few, while the masses wallowed in debt and ignorance. The king did not order a redistribution of wealth, he ordered a redistribution of knowledge. This leads into the 7 cures for a lean purse, a sequence of psychological and tactical shifts designed to transform a pauper into a prince. The first cure, start thy purse to fattening, is the foundational habit of the 10%. The second, control thy expenditures, is the most difficult battle of the human ego. It is the war against lifestyle creep. Our code teaches that what we call necessary expenses will always grow to equal our income unless we protest. We must differentiate between our needs and our desires. To spend more than you must is to bleed out your future potential for a moment of fleeting vanity. The third cure, make thy gold multiply, focuses on the miracle of compound interest. In Babylon, gold did not sit in a chest, it was put into the hands of reliable men who used it to build trade routes and irrigation systems, returning it with a harvest of interest. The fourth cure, guard thy treasures from loss, warns against the siren song of get-rich-quick schemes. The fifth, make of thy dwelling a profitable investment, emphasizes the psychological stability of ownership. The sixth, ensure a future income, is the archetype of the provider, looking toward the winter of life. And the seventh, the most vital of all, is increase thy ability to earn. This is the call to self-mastery. A man's greatest asset is not his gold, but his mind. By becoming more skilled, more efficient, and more knowledgeable, a man increases the value he can trade for gold. The narrative then shifts to a deeper, more harrowing tale, the story of Nemasa, the son of Arkad. To prove his worthiness to inherit the family fortune, Nemasa was sent into the world with nothing but a bag of gold and a clay tablet engraved with the 5 laws of gold. Like many who inherit wealth without wisdom, Nemasa ignored the tablet and followed the gold. He was seduced by the sensational promises of the racetrack and the smooth words of false friends who claimed to have inside information. Within months, his gold was gone, his friends had vanished, and he was reduced to a beggar. This is the archetype of the prodigal son, a psychological warning that money without a philosophy is merely a temporary illusion. Only when he was at his absolute nadir did Nemasa turn to the clay tablet. He began to labor for small coins, applying the laws he had once mocked. He discovered that the gold returns to the man who respects it, and it flees from the man who tries to force it into impossible yields. The lesson of Nemasa is the law of merit. Wealth is not a right, it is a reflection of one's internal character and adherence to the laws of the universe. When Nemasa returned to his father, he brought back not just the original gold, but 3 times its value, earned through the sweat of his brow and the discipline of his mind. He had transformed from a boy who possessed gold into a man whom gold possessed. This story forces the listener to realize that luck is not a random occurrence but a meeting of opportunity and preparation. In the halls of Babylon's Temple of Learning, the citizens debated whether one could attract the goddess of good luck. They concluded that the goddess favors the man of action. Luck is the byproduct of being in the game, of having the courage to say yes when an opportunity presents itself, and having the capital, the saved 10%, to back that yes. The man who hesitates, who waits for a sure thing, or who dickers over small points, is the man the goddess ignores. The sensational truth is that good luck is often just another name for decisiveness. We create our own luck by being the kind of people who are ready to receive it. This is a radical departure from the victimhood that plagues the streets. It places the power of destiny firmly in the hands of the individual. The narrative continues to descend into the grit of the human condition with the story of Dabasir, the camel trader. Once a proud man, Dabasir's greed and lack of discipline led him into a spiral of debt that forced him to flee Babylon and eventually become a slave in a foreign land. His story is the archetype of the debt slave, a condition that is as common today as it was 3,000 years ago. In the desert, working under the lash, Dabasir had to decide if he had the soul of a free man or the soul of a slave. A free man looks at his debts and his failures and sees a mountain he must climb. A slave looks at them and sees a grave he must lie in. Dabasir's escape from slavery and his return to Babylon is a visceral masterclass in redemption through responsibility. He did not hide from his creditors, he faced them. He used a specific, disciplined plan, 70% of his income for his family, 20% to pay back his debts, and 10% for himself. This plan is sensational because it defies the logic of the desperate. The desperate man thinks he must give everything to his debt and starve, or save everything and hide. Dabasir proved that by paying himself first, even while in debt, he maintained his dignity and his hope, which gave him the strength to pay back every copper he owed. The journey of Dabasir serves as the psychological bridge between the desperation of the past and the sovereignty of the future. It illustrates that debt is a heavy shroud, a spiritual weight that dims the light of the soul until the man feels he is nothing more than a beast of burden. But when Dabasir sat in the dust of the desert, watching the Syrian sun sink below the horizon, he realized that his chains were not made of iron, but of his own choices. This is the sensational turning point in the seeker's journey, the moment of absolute ownership. To return to Babylon and face the men he had wronged required more courage than any battlefield. He had to stand before those who mocked him and declare his intent to be whole again. The 20% plan he employed was not merely a financial strategy, it was an alchemical ritual of restoration. By consistently chipping away at the mountain of his obligations while simultaneously building his own reservoir of wealth, he proved that a man's character is the ultimate currency. This segment of the story analyzes the archetype of the accountable hero. It teaches the listener that your past does not define your future unless you allow your debts, both financial and moral, to remain unaddressed. Integrity is the foundation upon which all permanent wealth is built. Without it, the gold you accumulate will have no floor to rest upon, and it will eventually sink back into the earth. The narrative flow now moves into the shadow of the counting house, where we encounter the story of Rodan, the spear maker. Rodan had suddenly come into a fortune of 50 gold pieces, a gift from the king. Overwhelmed by this sudden influx of power, he sought the counsel of Mathan, the gold lender. This meeting represents the archetype of the threshold guardian. Mathan did not tell Rodan how to spend the money, he told him how to protect it. He shared the parable of the farmer and the ox, a cautionary tale about the dangers of taking on the burdens of others at the expense of one's own strength. Rodan's sister wanted the gold to help her husband start a business, but the husband was a dreamer with no record of success. Mathan's advice was piercing: if thou desirest to help thy friend, do so in a way that will not bring thy friend's burdens upon thyself. This strikes at the heart of the sacrificial lamb complex. Many people lose their path to wealth because they allow themselves to be guilted into subsidizing the incompetence or the laziness of others under the guise of kindness. The sensational lesson here is that true generosity requires wisdom. To give gold to someone who does not know the laws of gold is like giving a sword to a child, it will only result in injury. Mathan's wisdom reveals that the gold lender is not a villain, but a realist who understands that capital must be respected as if it were a living, breathing entity. As the sun sets over the hanging gardens, the narrative reaches its most profound psychological depth with the story of Shahunada and Hotangula. Shahunada, a wealthy and respected merchant, traveled with the grandson of his former partner. The young man, Hotangula, was the epitome of the degenerate arrogant, entitled, and contemptuous of work. He believed that because his grandfather had been wealthy, the world owed him a life of luxury. Shahunada took him on a journey and revealed a secret that shattered the young man's world. Shahunada had once been a slave. He described the visceral reality of the slave market, the smell of fear, and the branding iron. But he also described how he found his freedom through the gospel of labor. While other slaves complained and did the bare minimum to avoid the whip, Shahunada sought to be the most valuable slave his master ever owned. He worked with such fervor and intelligence that he became indispensable. He treated every task as an opportunity to prove his soul of a free man. This story introduces the archetype of work as the great liberator. In a world that often views labor as a curse or a necessary evil to be escaped, the Babylonian wisdom suggests that work is the very thing that gives a man his dignity and his path to power. Shahunada did not become a merchant after he became free. He became a merchant in his heart while he was still in chains. His labor was the key that turned the lock of his cage. This is a sensational reversal of modern thought. We are told to work so that we can one day stop working. But the richest man in Babylon suggests that we should work because it is through work that we participate in the soul of the world. Hotangula, hearing this, realized that his contempt for labor was actually a contempt for his own potential. He saw that his grandfather's wealth was not a trophy to be displayed, but a legacy of effort to be honored. The psychological lesson is clear: fortune is a fickle guest who only stays in the house where hard work is the host. The tapestry of Babylon is now nearly complete. showing a city that was great not because of its walls, but because of the character of its citizens. The city was a meritocracy of the mind. The stories of the scribe, the chariot builder, the camel trader, and the spearmaker all converge on a single, undeniable truth: wealth is the result of a specific set of behaviors that anyone can adopt. It is not a secret hidden in a dark temple, it is a set of laws written in the very nature of trade and human interaction. We see that the goddess of luck is actually a metaphor for the alignment of one's life with these laws. When you pay yourself first, when you seek wise counsel, when you protect your principle, and when you embrace labor as your best friend, you create a gravity of success that pulls the gold toward you. The psychological intensity of this realization is that it removes all excuses. You cannot blame the king, the gods, or your upbringing. If your purse is lean, it is because you have not yet applied the cures. The narrative now prepares for its final movement. Drawing these ancient echoes into the present moment, we see that the bricks of Babylon may have crumbled into dust, but the gold laws remain as sharp and effective as the day they were first carved into clay. The sensational reality of our modern existence is that we are surrounded by more Babylonian gold than ever before. Yet we remain slaves to the invisible lash of debt and consumerism because we have forgotten the simple wisdom of the ancients. We are overlookers of the fundamental. We seek complex algorithms and high-frequency trading when we should be seeking the discipline of the 1/10. The final revelation is approaching, the understanding that wealth is not a destination you reach, but a way of walking through the world. It is a state of being where you are no longer a victim of the economy, but an architect of it. You are the king, the scribe, and the alchemist of your own fortune. The ancient city is not a place in history, it is a potential within your own life, waiting for you to build its walls with the bricks of your own discipline. The final echoes of the Babylonian marketplace fade into a profound, shimmering silence, leaving only the weight of the great truth to settle in the marrow of your bones. This is the ultimate stage of the alchemical process of wealth, the realization that the gold coins in the chest are merely the physical shadow of a far more radiant spiritual reality. The journey from the dust of Bansa's idol workshop to the sovereign height of Akkad's palace is not a movement across space, but a movement across the dimensions of the human soul. We are overlooking the most important thing. The 7 cures and the 5 laws are not just financial instructions, they are the blueprints for a psychological fortress. To pay yourself first is to declare your own sovereignty in a world that seeks to make you a servant. To make your gold multiply is to participate in the infinite abundance of a universe that is constantly expanding. To guard your treasures is to exercise the discernment of a king. As we analyze the final transformation of the characters, we see that the true meaning of the richest man in Babylon is the total annihilation of the victim archetype. The book's ultimate intent is to strip away the comforting lies we tell ourselves about why we are not successful. It reveals that the chains of poverty are forged from the soft metal of procrastination, the brittle iron of ignorance, and the heavy lead of self-indulgence. When you break these chains, you do not just find wealth, you find yourself. The story of the slave who became a merchant through the sheer force of his labor is the ultimate sensational provocation to the modern reader. It tells you that there is no situation so dire, no debt so deep, and no past so dark that it cannot be transmuted by the application of these laws. You are being called to stop looking for a goddess of luck and start looking at the tools in your own hands. The final psychological shift is the movement from searcher to source. Akkad did not just accumulate gold. He became the source of Babylon's prosperity by teaching others. This is the archetype of the generous sovereign. True wealth is not a hoard to be guarded in fear, but a river that must be allowed to flow so that it can nourish the entire valley. By sharing the wisdom, the gold does not diminish, it multiplies. The legacy of Babylon is the realization that a society is only as strong as the financial intelligence of its individual citizens. When you master your own purse, you are not just helping yourself, you are strengthening the fabric of the world. You are becoming a brick in the wall of a new Babylon, a city of the mind that cannot be conquered by time or circumstance. The sensational reality of your life at this very moment is that the sycamore tree and the clay tablets are already in your possession. You have the knowledge. You have the capacity for labor. You have the 1/10 that you earn every single day. The only thing missing is the soul of a free man, the decisive, unshakable will to act upon what you know. The treasure is not at the end of a long journey, it is at the beginning of a new habit. The gold you seek is currently being spent on things that do not matter, by a version of you that has not yet realized its own power. The climax of this narrative is your own awakening. You stand at the gates of the city, and the king is asking, will you remain a slave to your appetites? Or will you become the master of your destiny? The ultimate meaning of the Babylonian wisdom is that wealth is the natural result of a soul in harmony with the laws of production and preservation. It is the external evidence of an internal discipline. It is the reward for the courage to prioritize the future over the present, and the wisdom to value triumphed effort over unearned luck. You are no longer the shepherd boy or the chariot builder, you are the initiate who has seen the fire of the forge and the glitter of the gold. The path is clear. The laws are written. The city is yours to build. Wealth is not a matter of what you earn, but of who you choose to become.